Hi, my name is Danica Reed and I'm 41 years old. This is the story of how my sister destroyed everything I ever loved, my life, my marriage, my daughter, and thought she got away with it. But she didn't know I was still watching. She didn't know. I kept every secret and now I'm taking it all back. This story is written and edited by Dark Life Side Diaries. If you're new to the channel, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more dark, emotional, and horrifying family stories. Like this, One grew up in a small riverside town in Oregon where everything looks beautiful on the outside: white fences, maple trees, polite neighbors. But beneath all that calm is a silence that holds back every scream, every betrayal, every truth you're too ashamed to admit. And my life was no different. My sister Brielle was always the good one, the perfect one, the kind of girl who made teachers smile, who won beauty pageants at 13, who was prom queen, valedictorian, everything. I wasn't. Danica was the quiet one, the too serious one, the one who kept her head down, stayed out of the spotlight, and watched from the shadows. What no one saw behind Brielle's fake smile was what she did to me when no one was looking. She told our parents I stole from them when I didn't. She lied to my boyfriends and turned them against me. She even once cut her own arm and told everyone I pushed her down the stairs when we were 17. But still I stayed silent because my mother loved her, because my father called her angel, and because when I tried to fight back they called me jealous. Brielle knew it too. She always smiled with those cold eyes that said no one will believe you, and they didn't. Not when she told everyone I cheated my way through college, not when she kissed my fiancé the week before our wedding, and not even when I caught her slipping prescription meds into my drink to calm me down. After our father died, after a while I stopped trying to expose her. I just faded, moved away, started over in Idaho, started a small cleaning business, raised my daughter Emily alone. I didn't talk to Brielle for 12 years, not until my mother died last fall, and Brielle showed up at the funeral with crocodile tears, in black heels, holding my daughter's hand. Yes, my daughter, because 2 weeks earlier she'd taken Emily, lied to her, told her I was unstable, showed her fake documents, told the courts I was mentally unfit, and the judge believed her because she had the money, the influence, the image. I had none. And when I tried to fight, she blocked my calls, moved out of state, hid my child from me. I almost lost my mind. But I didn't break. I waited, I rebuilt, and I learned everything I could about her new life, where she moved, who she dated, who she fired from her boutique when they asked questions. I learned how she changed Emily's last name, how she enrolled her in a private school under guardianship, how she told everyone that I had disappeared. She even told Emily I died, she buried me. But she made one mistake. She forgot that I never forget. For a year, I lived in silence, watching from across the state line, building a case, recording her, gathering witnesses, documenting every false paper she forged. I became obsessed, not just with getting my daughter back, but with watching Brielle fall. And then I found it, the secret, the one thing that could destroy her. The thing even she didn't know had been caught on camera. A video, one that tied her to our father's death, one that proved she lied to everyone. And that's when I knew this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice, cold, final, and irreversible. I never planned to become a criminal, but grief, rage, and betrayal have a way of sculpting you into something sharp, something useful, something with teeth. And so when I found out where Brielle had moved, I didn't call her, I didn't send letters, I didn't scream. I rented a place 3 blocks down under a false name, dyed my hair, took a job cleaning offices at night, and learning everything I could during the day. Because this wasn't just about watching anymore. This was about calculating, waiting, choosing the perfect moment to destroy her the way she had destroyed me. I started small, testing my access, learning the layout of her gated suburban home, noting when she left for work, when her nanny picked Emily up from school, and when the security system flicked from green to red. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'll never regret it. One afternoon, while she was away at a networking retreat and Emily was with the nanny, I let myself into her home using a copied keycard I lifted from her purse at the funeral. The house was as fake as her smile: white marble counters, designer candles, fake motivational quotes in gold frames. But it was the office that mattered, the place. He kept locked with a 4-digit PIN. The One I cracked after 2 weeks of watching her input it from a neighbor's roof with binoculars, and inside the office I found the safe, and inside the safe I found everything: records, bank statements, legal forgeries, and most importantly a digital camcorder buried under years of tax files with a mini SD card still loaded inside. I didn't know what I had yet, but I took it, copied it, and returned everything else exactly the way I found it. Brielle W. I'd never noticed because Brielle never looked at the details. She only performed for the surface. And that night I played the video in my rented one-room apartment, hands shaking, chest hollow, and what I saw made my blood freeze. It was footage from 13 years ago, the week our father died, a grainy feed from our hidden camera in the old guest house behind our childhood home, and on that tape I watched Brielle dressed in all white pouring something into his Scotch morphine based on the label and whispering, "You always loved her more." I fixed it, then calmly she stood, wiped the glass, and left as he slumped into the chair unconscious, dying. The file was time-stamped, uninterrupted, damning, and if the court saw it she wouldn't just lose custody, she'd lose everything. But even as I stare at the screen, victory at my fingertips, something inside me twisted, because I remembered that night and I remembered that I had walked past the guest house, her voices, and never went inside because I didn't want to get dragged into another one of their fights. But maybe I should have. Maybe if I had, none of this would have happened, and now here we were a decade later with a daughter she stole from me, a lie that buried my name in a death she painted over with pearls and charity events. And yet Brielle still smiled on social media, still posed with Emily as if she were her own, and the world applauded her for it. I waited 2 more weeks, biding my time, following her online, reading the way she spoke about her miracle adoption, the way she claimed I had walked out on motherhood. And then finally I got my first real chance, a job open at the local church, where she volunteered cleaning staff, off hours, no background check, no photos. I applied. Got it. I knew she used that space for private mentorship sessions to gain clout, to manipulate people into loving her just like she always had. And now I had access to the one place she thought was her sanctuary. I installed a camera in the wall right behind the framed quote she never shut up about: "God sees all." And I waited to catch her slipping, waited for her mask to fall, and it did. Oh, it did. That camera saw everything. The way she yelled at Emily when no one was around, the way she told the pastor's wife that Emily's birth mother was a mentally unstable junkie, me, the way she coached my daughter to forget I ever existed. I copied the footage, compiled it, cut it with the footage of our father. I built her video file that didn't just expose her, it destroyed her. And yet I didn't send it, not yet, because something in me didn't want to just ruin her. I wanted her to know, I wanted her to feel it coming. So I sent her one still image from that tape, a photo, her pouring the morphine. I sent it to her anonymous email, and I waited. That night her social media went dark, her store closed early, and for the first time in 13 years, she called me and said, "Danica, what do you want?" And I smiled because I had waited 13 years to answer that question. The call came in at 12 a.m., long after the world had gone quiet, long after I had given up expecting her to ever say my name again. And when I saw a known caller flash on my burner phone, I knew without even answering that it was her, because guilt never sleeps, and for someone like Brielle, guilt festers until it eats you alive. I let the phone ring once, twice, 3 times before I picked up, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted her to feel how much control I had now, how different the power dynamic had become. And when I finally pressed it to my ear, I didn't say a word. I let her speak first, and the voice that came through was brittle, tense, but still dripping with the artificial calm she always used on strangers and judges. "Danica, I think we need to talk," she said. And it was strange hearing my real name come from her lips after she'd spent years scrubbing it from our family, from my daughter, from the court records, as if erasing me made her righteous. And I laughed, not kindly, just enough to let her know I wasn't the same broken sister she buried in court. And I said, "Do you want to talk about the footage or about the fact that you killed Dad?" Her silence was loud, long, then coolly, "You don't know what you're doing, you'll ruin everything." And I said, "That's the point, Brielle, I want to ruin everything." That was when her mask cracked. Just enough for truth to bleed through. What do you want? She asked, not angry, not afraid, just calculating. And I realized in that moment she didn't think I had the strength to go through with it. She still thought I was the weak one, the quiet one, so I told her. I want my daughter back. I want you to tell the truth, and I want the world to know what you really are. She exhaled sharply, fake pain like always, and said, if you go public with this you'll drag Emily through hell. I smelled into the phone. No, you already did that, and I hung up. 3 days passed. She didn't respond. But I saw the signs. Her boutique shuttered for renovations, her Instagram turned private, and suddenly there was a lawyer at my door with a thick folder labeled custody settlement, a preemptive bribe. She wanted me to stay silent. She was offering me joint custody, supervised visitation, even a monthly stipend if I signed a confidentiality agreement. I read every word. I shredded it. And then I walked into the courtroom and filed my own petition, not just for custody, but for a civil suit using the evidence I had. I subpoenaed her emails, her financials, her records from the night our father died. She panicked. She begged for mediation, but it was too late. I didn't want a settlement. I wanted exposure, and I got it. The story broke in the local press 2 weeks later. Businesswoman accused of falsifying adoption to steal sister's child. The video went viral within 48 hours. Her face, once adored, once trusted, was now everywhere, framed beside the words fraud, liar, suspect. And just when I thought she'd stay in hiding, Brielle did what she always did. She fought back dirty. She published her own tell-all interview with a sleazy tabloid, claiming I had suffered a mental breakdown, that I had been institutionalized twice, that our father had cut me off in his will due to erratic behavior, and worst of all, she used Emily. She put her on camera, asked her leading questions, twisted her words to make it sound like she had no memory of me, that I was just a name on a birth certificate. I watched it in silence. My lawyer said, we can sue for defamation, but I didn't care about that. I only cared about Emily, so I made her choice a hard-on. I released the last part of the footage, the one that showed Brielle alone standing at our father's grave 6 months after his death, talking to herself, confessing to what she did, crying, saying, I didn't mean to kill him. I just wanted him to see me for once. It broke the internet again, and this time the police couldn't ignore it. They opened an inquiry, and Brielle, she disappeared, shut off her phone, didn't show up for court. The last message I got from her was a single line, you always wanted to be me, now you are. It made no sense then, but it does now, because when I opened the door to my motel room the next morning, there was a package. On the floor inside was a letter and a copy of my daughter's birth certificate, newly revised, listing Brielle as mother, and me erased again. The moment I saw my name erased from the new birth certificate, my name replaced with hers in black ink, like I had never carried Emily in my body, never nursed her when she was sick, never sang to her on rainy nights. I felt something crack open in me that wasn't rage and wasn't grief, but something worse. Recognition, like I had finally stepped into the role Brielle had always written for me, the ghost, the invisible sister, the one no one remembers until she starts haunting them. And for a moment, I just stood there in that cheap motel hallway, holding the envelope with shaking hands, realizing this wasn't just Brielle being vindictive anymore. This was war, a cold paper trail, war where the truth didn't matter unless it could scream louder than the lie, and somehow my sister had always known how to scream prettier. I didn't sleep that night. I just watched the rain crawl down the windows and tried to remember what it felt like to be Emily's mother before the court dates, the lies, the lawyers, the lost years. But even my memories felt stolen now, like secondhand footage from someone else's life, and I wondered if this is how Brielle had always felt. Like I was the chosen one, the loved one, the one who deserved more. Maybe her entire life had been one long attempt to rewrite the rules until she was the victim and I was the villain, and now legally she'd done it. But Peeper wasn't power, not really. I had something she didn't, the truth, and I realized if she could forge identities, so could I, not for revenge, for restoration. So I did what she would have done. I stole back my life, one lie at a time. First, I changed my name legally back to Danica Grace Reed, reinstating the identity she'd tried to kill. Then I reached out to the one person Brielle had completely underestimated, Her old assistant Mara, the same girl she'd fired 6 months ago for attitude. Mara still had access to Brielle's cloud backup accounts, and with one coffee meeting and a mutual understanding of what it felt like to be crushed by Brielle's ambition, Mara gave me a copy of every document she ever scanned: medical files, legal emails, school applications. And in one of those folders was my smoking gun, a falsified signature form from the pediatric clinic where Emily had been seeing a therapist. Only the signature wasn't mine, and it wasn't even Brielle's. It was a forged hybrid, a mash of our names. As if she hadn't decided who she wanted to be that day, I handed that document to my lawyer. He smiled. Now we've got leverage. But what I didn't expect was what came next. The therapist, Dr. Harper, called me, not the lawyer, me. And her voice was cautious, measured, but something in it hinted at fear. She said, "I shouldn't be calling you, but your daughter. She's been drawing some very disturbing things." I froze. What kind of things? "I asked you on fire in a closet, screaming, and someone watching through a keyhole." My skin turned cold because no one, not even Emily, knew about that. It was an old childhood memory from when Brielle locked me in our linen closet during a thunderstorm when we were kids. I never told anyone ever, but Emily, somehow, she knew. I asked Dr. Harper if she thought Emily was in danger. She said, "That depends. Is Brielle unstable?" And I answered the only way I could. "She's whatever she needs to be to win." And suddenly I realized this wasn't about proving who was right. It was about saving Emily before the game took her to. So I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I recorded a video, not for the court, not for the press, for Emily. In it, I told her everything, the real story, my story, her birth, the fire, Brielle's lies, our father's death. I cried in it. I didn't cut out the emotion. I wanted her to see me raw, real. I sent it to Dr. Harper with one request: please let Emily watch this in a safe space. She agreed to. Days later, I got a reply from an anonymous Gmail, just 2 words: "She knows that night someone broke into my motel room. They didn't take anything, just left a note on the bed." 4 words written in red lipstick on hotel stationery: "Only one sister survives." And that was the moment I stopped being scared. That was the moment I became her. I used to think revenge was about balance, about restoring what was taken. But by the time I stood outside Brielle's boutique 3 nights later in the pouring rain, with my hair tucked under a baseball cap and my heart pounding like a funeral drum, I realized revenge isn't about balance. It's about clarity, about seeing someone's soul naked and knowing you can either spare it or burn it. And I had already made my choice. I wasn't here to scare her. I wasn't here to leave warnings. I was here to end it, and I knew exactly how, because Brielle had always underestimated my patience, my planning, my will to become someone she couldn't control. And now I had the upper hand. Not just the evidence, not just the lawyer, but Emily's trust, and that was the only currency that mattered in this war of sisters. It started with a subtle leak, an anonymous tip to a parenting podcast about a well-known boutique owner facing disturbing allegations, then a copy of the forged documents delivered to the board of her daughter's private school, followed by a private investigator digging into the death of our father with fresh eyes and a new theory that he was drugged before his heart attack. By the end of that week, Brielle's carefully curated world began to bend, the threads unraveling with every whisper in her church group, every empty customer slot at her store, every time someone asked her if she really adopted Emily or just took her. And while she scrambled, spinning PR and calling in favors, I stayed silent, moving like a shadow through her life, setting traps, opening doors she'd nailed shut with charm and fake compassion. But none of it compared to the moment Emily called me, not through her phone, but from a school landline, whispering so quietly I could barely hear. "Mom, she says you're dangerous, but you never made me cry like she does. What do I believe?" And I choked back every tear, because I knew this wasn't just about legal guardianship anymore. It was about truth and fear, and a little girl stuck between 2 realities that didn't fit. And I said, "You believe what feels safe. You believe the person who never had to lie to keep you." And that's when I knew it was time to finish it. I arranged a meeting with my lawyer, and the child services investigator brought every piece of footage, every forged paper, every psych evaluation Brielle had weaponized against me, and I laid it all out with one final recording, an audio clip of Brielle on the phone with her ex screaming that Danica is too dumb to fight back. If I say she's crazy, the court will believe me. They always do, and it worked. The next week I got an emergency court date, full custody. Petition reopens supervised visitation for Brielle, suspended, and a psychological review order for her parenting rights. But it wasn't just the court she lost, it was her mind. Because the same night I won that ruling, I saw her outside my motel window, just standing there in the rain, no umbrella, staring up at my door like a ghost trying to find its way back into a body that no longer belonged to her, and I didn't open it. I didn't invite her, and I just stared back knowing that she was now the one on the outside watching unraveling. The next morning, Emily's therapist called me again, this time with a different tone. Emily wants to see you privately. She says she remembers something from when she was for something she never told anyone. I rushed to that office so fast my lungs burned, and when I walked in, Emily looked at me like she finally saw her mother, not the memory, not the whisper, but the woman who never stopped fighting for her. She reached out, took my hand, and said, "She used to tell me you died, but I dreamed you were alive. You had long hair and you used to sing Moon River." I cried so hard I couldn't speak because that song was our lullaby, one only is. And that's when I knew, truly knew, I was coming back from the dead, not just in paperwork, not just in the law, but in my child's eyes. But Brielle wasn't done. No, the next day she filed a restraining order against me, claiming harassment, stalking, defamation. She knew she couldn't win in court, so she wanted to win in chaos, stalling the custody hearing, buying time to create more lies. But this time I had more than words. I had a secret of my own. You see, weeks earlier I found a second video hidden deep in our father's old laptop backup files, a video where Brielle drank, confessed something worse than the morphine. She admitted to deleting his final will and forging a new one, leaving everything to her. And that was a felony. I never released that video. I saved it until now. And when I filed it with my legal team and the DA's office, everything shifted. Brielle wasn't just a toxic sister anymore. She was a criminal. And now she had a court date of her own. But the night before her arraignment, she sent me one final message, a voice memo, shirt crooked with emotion. "You always wanted to be me. Well, now you are a liar, a manipulator, a thief. Look what you became, Danica." And I sat there listening, wondering, maybe she was right, maybe. To win, I had to become her. I didn't sleep the night before Brielle's arraignment, not because I was afraid of what might happen, but because I was terrified of what wouldn't. That somehow, after everything I had unearthed, everything I had sacrificed, the system would still find a way to look at her polished hair, her practiced voice, her motherhood disguise, and decide she was the victim. But when the courtroom doors opened and I saw her sitting at the defense table, in a black suit to sizes too tight and eyes that had lost their fire, I knew something inside her had already begun to rot from the inside. Because Brielle wasn't built for exposure, she wasn't built for consequence. She was built for shadows, whispers, and manipulation, and now stripped of that armor, she looked smaller than I remembered, like the person behind the mask had finally realized the mask was the person. The charges listed were more than she'd ever imagined: custodial interference, forgery, fraud, perjury, and though the DA didn't pursue manslaughter for our father's death, they didn't have to. The moral conviction from the court of public opinion had already sentenced her, and this was just the paperwork. But the most surreal moment came when the judge asked if the victim was present, and I stood, not with rage, not with pride, but with the weight of 13 years on my shoulders, and said, "My name is Danica Grace Reed. I am her sister, and I am the mother of the child she tried to erase." The courtroom fell silent. Even Brielle didn't blink, just stare at me like she was looking at a ghost, and maybe she was, because the woman standing before her now wasn't the one she left behind years ago. We had the same bones, the same voice, but not the same soul. This version of me had crawled through hell, and I wasn't walking back. And after court adjourned, I sat alone in my car with Emily's favorite stuffed bear in my lap, knowing the next next step was hers, the custody hearing. Because if I won that, I wouldn't just be her mother on paper, I'd be her mother in truth again. But Brielle had one last trick up her sleeve 2 days before the hearing. She requested a private meeting with Emily, no press, no lawyers, just her and the child she'd called daughter for 5 years. I didn't want to agree, but the therapist insisted it could help Emily process, so I waited in the hallway of the child therapy center. Well, my daughter sat in a room with a woman who had turned her life into a lie. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw through the glass Brielle kneeling, crying, holding Emily's hands, Emily pulling away a quiet goodbye when Emily came out. She walked past me and said only one thing. She said, "You won," but she said, "I'll always be hers in a way you'll never understand." And those words split me open, because I knew they were true in the most painful way. Brielle had been part of Emily's life during years I wasn't there, and no courtroom could erase that. But I also saw the way Emily looked at me now, not with confusion, but with clarity. She had chosen the day of the hearing. I gave no speeches. I let the truth stand on its own. The papers, the footage, the therapist's report, and when the judge ruled in my favor, granting me full custody with no visitation for Brielle, I didn't cheer, I didn't cry, I just looked over at my sister and nodded. She didn't look back. She didn't flinch, she just stood and walked out like a statue. Later that night, I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't answer. The voicemail came in seconds later. It was her, just one sentence: "I buried you once, Danica, and someday someone will bury me too." I deleted the message, and in the silence that followed, I packed Emily's things, held her hand, and walked away from the war I thought would never end. But part of me knew the ghost of Brielle would never leave me, because no matter how much you win, you never walk away clean. It's strange how even after you win, after the judge stamps your name back into the birth certificate, after the lies are burned away by court documents and digital proof, there's no music, no relief. No moment where the sky parts and everything feels whole again. Instead, it's quiet, too quiet, like the sound of a battlefield after everyone's gone, and the smoke still lingers in the air. And that's how it felt holding Emily's hand as we stepped into the little house I rented by the lake, our new home, our clean slate, our hard-won beginning. But even then, as she walked through the hallway, picking her room and laughing at the glow in the dark stars, I stuck to her ceiling. I knew that some part of me would always live in that motel, in that courtroom, in the shadows of Brielle's eyes. And maybe that's what revenge really leaves you with. Not joy, not peace, but space, a hollow place where something used to live, and now you have to figure out what to plant in its absence. Emily adjusted quickly, quicker than I expected, asking smart questions about our past, connecting dots she was once too young to understand. And every time she said "Mom" without hesitation, my throat ached, not from pain, but from the weight of something I thought I'd lost forever, finding its way back to me in the simplest, most powerful word in the world. But even that wasn't simple, because Brielle's ghost lived in her too, in the way she folded towels the way Brielle did, or how she paused before trusting someone new, or how she sometimes asked, "Are you going to leave like last time?" Even though she knew now that I didn't leave, I was taken. So we went to therapy together, built routines, cooked silly dinners, watched movies I missed during the last years, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like a mother, not a weapon, not a plaintiff, not a shadow screaming for justice. But beneath it all, I kept waiting for the knock on the door, for the sudden return of a woman who refused to lose quietly. Because Brielle never did anything without a final act. I thought that moment came when I received a package with no return address, a tiny box with a single USB drive and a note: "You buried me, now listen to the eulogy." My hands trembled as I plugged it into my laptop, expecting another trap, another manipulation. But what I found was a video, not a threat, not blackmail, just Brielle sitting on a bench near the ocean, wind in her hair, eyes tired, not angry, not sharp, just empty. And in that video, she said, "I loved her, do you know? I know you'll never believe that, but I did, maybe. Not in the way a mother should, but in the only way I knew. And I hated you for being everything she needed. I hated myself for needing her more than she ever needed me. So I took her, not because I thought I deserved her, But because I couldn't bear to be invisible again, I'm sorry, Danica, I really am not. Because I lost, but because I made you into someone who had to fight me to survive. You won. And I hope that's enough to make you forget the woman I turned you into. And that was the last I ever heard from her. No return address, no confirmation, just silence. I cried for a long time, not for her, for the version of us that could have existed, sisters, mothers, survivors. But fate doesn't play fair, it just plays final. And now, 2 years later, Emily and I still live by the lake. She's 13 now, smarter than ever. She asks fewer questions. She's building her own identity, one free of courtroom shadows. And sometimes, when we're lying in bed and I sing Moon River, she whispers, I remember. And that's all I need. Not revenge, not apologies, just memory, just truth. People ask me sometimes if I'd do it all again, if I dig through the wreckage, become the kind of woman who lies and stalks and hides cameras in walls. And I say yes every time, because when someone takes your life, your name, your child, you either disappear or you're seen. I didn't just Rice made sure she fell forever. Thanks for watching my videos. Please subscribe our channel to get latest videos.